Welcome to this next little special episode of Talk Commerce at UnConf Florida. I have Adrian Luna. Adrian is with Webscale. Adrian, introduce yourself and tell us what you do for Webscale and a little bit about Webscale.
Yeah, I am Adrian Luna. I am from Webscale. I'm a Senior Director of Partner Solutions, so my team is responsible for managing our relationships with our SIs, both at the regional and global level, also some of the symbiotic relationships we have with our technology partners, and just overall the health of our channel division here.
Great, and tell us what is the main purpose of Webscale?
Yes, so oddly enough, I like starting these conversations around everybody looks at us when we walk through a door typically as a hosting provider. We do have the capability, obviously, of hosting an application in a production environment in the public cloud, which is a huge component of what we do. Webscale's core services actually lie in our SaaS platform that's built for e-commerce. So meaning Webscale's software is delivered and sits in that middle mile, what we call the data path, between end devices that are accessing an environment and also that back-end environment, whether it's hosted or otherwise. Our responsibilities lie very much in sitting in between and as a proxy layer in between those end devices and the back-end commerce platforms, and it actually allows us flexibility to be agnostic, not just in the cloud environments that we deploy into, but also the applications that we support. Yeah, it's crazy times in commerce right now, so it's nice to be able to have a flexible delivery model that we can act as a hosting provider when we're tasked to and when we need to, or we can be edge delivery, edge compute, edge security provider for a SaaS backend. So.
Yeah, earlier we were just talking about how you don't often know the technology sometimes what clients are going to come, or you
Right.
learn about them. Dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Not going to go so much into sales operations, but if you look at our typical sales cycle, we're brought in, I would say, 45 to 60 days before a project is aimed at going live. And I think that's a testament to the health of the relationships that we have with the agencies and SIs that are doing the code level work. And when they understand that now actionable code has now been committed and it needs to be turned into action at the infrastructure level. And the reason why I say that is because by the time Webscale is brought in to deliver on an application that was built, or the software level architecture that has largely been under a scope of work likely for 6 months before we were brought in. A lot of the decisions of what the stack is and what these, whether it's composable commerce components that are all pieced together to create this e-commerce ecosystem, or whether it's a monolithic environment, regardless, the decisions have already been made on what that software stack looks like, and we're being looked at to deliver upon that, whether it's, as I mentioned, purely front-end delivery or full front-end edge delivery all the way to the back end. It's an interesting spot to be in, because we're not nearly as involved as you all are in platform selection and vendor selection and looking at what this stack is going to end up looking like when it's in full production. We're just being asked to deliver components of it. So the conversation we were having is really all based around me understanding what it's like in the life of a Magento salesperson who's asked more of an application level discovery, where Webscale, by the time it gets to us, we're just delivering what you've already.
Where do you think e-commerce is going this next, let's say 12 months? Are you seeing more SaaS, or are you seeing a mixture of SaaS and hosting environments?
Oh man, great question. We are seeing more SaaS. I think that's just a nature of e-commerce and the individual applications themselves, some of them actually moving into more of a SaaS model. The thing I like about even what Adobe's doing, for instance, is they do have obviously their licensed platform as a service model, but one of the differentiators that Adobe, for instance, has is they still have the ability, whether it's publicly known or not, to offer themselves up as an on-prem delivery even for their enterprise customers. I think we've seen, I don't think it's necessarily applications or platforms going in one specific direction. I think it's more, it's agencies and the SIs that we work with are able to be a little bit more solution-based when you get to choose, hey, these are the technologies that I would like to use, and if a SaaS provider is the way to go for a specific component of it, great. If you'd rather have more of an open source application where you have a little bit more or a lot more control and direct access into its functionality, great. So yeah, it's really hard to say where things are going. I think every 6 months we do a look back and evaluate what's happened, and half the time any of the forecast models that we thought we would be delivering. They're quite different, I'd say, biannually.
Yeah, I bet the idea of this whole self-hosted microservices where somebody's hosting 20 or 30 different microservices is the type of business that you would like, but I think at the same time it probably is more complicated for you to manage because it is more complicated for the client to manage.
Right. Yeah, so we become the glue that binds most often than not, and we'd prefer it to be binding a small group of microservices or small group of different portions of a platform that have been deconstructed from the original monolith that they may have been deployed at in version 1. So yeah, to your point, we getting back to our delivery model, I think that's why we've been so successful in resonating with some of the agencies and SIs that are building these more modern approaches. But it's helpful for us to be able to understand what's happening at each layer and saying, hey, this is our spot in what we're being asked to manage and to deliver regardless of how it's been built.
So just as we wrap up, how do you think the face of our e-commerce community, and I guess right now we're probably a lot of Magento people here. Where do you think that's going? Do you think we're going to get back to where we were before?
I don't think there's any going back. I don't see commerce at all going, I hate to say going backwards, but really going back into days past. I think the responsibility lies on each of the vendors, whether they're in professional services and are responsible for building out an architecture level scope of work that actually meets a need, that meets a solution. And I think the agencies that are doing right by the end merchants, regardless of size, are the ones that continue to be successful. And our job is to sit and make sure that we're facilitating those requests. But in terms of where things are going, I think this individual focus on different components of an application, I think it is important. There's been a lot of people here talk today about reducing risk on a single component being asked to manage too many things, and the deconstruction of that and the individualized focus on each piece actually does help in reducing some of the risk of taking an entire enterprise down when something goes wrong. But I think the responsibility still lands on all of us in the community to make sure that as things continue to deconstruct and as microservices become more available and API-driven approaches become more available, that we're all responsible in making sure that we're building things and doing right by end merchants at the end of the day.
Great. Adrian Luna with Webscale, thank you so much for this time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep.